In today's episode of Let's Read Some Creepy Past Lives, we will be reading about a killer in the Crescent City, the true story that will haunt you. Now, this is not just any old city. This is one of the most haunted cities in the world. New Orleans is considered to be one of the most haunted cities in America, if not the most haunted city in America, and it has its reasons. Just like any other large city, it has had its share of crime, murders, paranormal activity, ghostly sightings, voodoo, and many other things that could be considered macabre or frightening. Many people believe that the city itself is cursed, and there are those who claim that they have experienced paranormal phenomena while visiting or living in the city. And this was certainly the case for the subject of our story today, whose name was Roger Breard. Roger was a World War II veteran who suffered from both physical and psychological trauma. After being injured in the war, he returned home and moved to the Big Easy. It was said that he was tormented by the memories of the fallen soldiers, as well as his own injuries, which included shrapnel embedded in his brain. But aside from the pain that he felt in his body, it was said that he also felt pain in his soul. His time in the war had left him broken, but unlike many others, he didn't receive the help that he needed, and so he ended up descending into madness. He did get an education, though, when it came to weaponry. While stationed in North Africa, he learned how to disassemble and reassemble various rifles, so much so that he became a weapons expert. When he moved to New Orleans, he opened up a gun shop called Roger's Repair Shop at 3201 South Claiborne Avenue. He fixed weapons and sold them too, and it was here where his problems started. Or rather, it's here where his problems started coming to a head. Because although his store seemed like a success, his personal life was a mess. And what made it worse was that soon after opening his business, he met a woman named Margaret, and she became his fiancée. Then he married her, and soon after, he began hearing voices telling him to kill her. And so he tried. In 1944, he shot her 3 times, but she survived. And then later that year, he strangled her, but again she lived. And then on December 17th, 1944, he shot her 4 times, and she finally died. What was even worse was that he then dismembered her and disposed of her remains in several different locations. Eventually, he would confess to these crimes, and he would say that the voices told him to do it. He was sentenced to life in prison, but later, he was declared insane, and the charges against him were dropped. He was sent to a mental institution instead, and during his stay there, he claimed that he had killed over 30 women. However, only 2 of these killings could be linked back to him with evidence. One of the cases was the case of Margaret, obviously, and the other was the case of a woman named Dorothy, whose disappearance was reported by her family in 1948. At the time of Dorothy's disappearance, Roger was already in the mental institution, but still, he confessed to killing her, and he told the police where he had buried her body. The police found the remains of Dorothy in the exact location where Roger said they would be. He was charged with her murder, but once again he pleaded insanity, and he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. While confined to the mental institution, he lived out the rest of his life, which ended in 1991. Aside from the numerous lives that he took, he also had a run-in with the law in 1961. It happened while he was staying at the Louisiana State Insane Asylum. It was said that one night he got into an altercation with a nurse. He pulled out a gun and shot her in the chest, but she survived. Now, this wasn't the first time that he had gotten into trouble for pulling out a weapon, as he had done this multiple times before. But he swore that the voices told him to do it. So once again, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was confined to the mental hospital until his death in 1991. Now, if you're curious as to whether or not Roger was really innocent, I don't know what to tell you. Honestly, I think he was crazy, but not necessarily innocent. Even if he heard voices telling him to commit horrible acts, he still chose to follow through with them, and therefore, I believe he should have been held accountable for his actions. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think he was innocent or not? And now let's move on to the next story. Side note, if you like stories like these, check out the series Criminal Psychology. There are 5 seasons available right now, with each season containing 13 episodes. Each episode covers a different case, giving you an inside look at the criminal mind. The way that they cover these cases is by bringing in an actual psychologist who gives an inside look at the criminals. The way that they cover these cases is by bringing in an actual psychologist who gives an inside look at the criminals behind some of the most heinous crimes. In my opinion, this show is fantastic, and I highly recommend it. And you can watch it on a streaming platform. When traveling abroad, there's nothing worse than getting sick and not being able to enjoy the trip. That's why it's so important to take precautions while traveling abroad. You might want to visit a pharmacy to pick up some medicine before going to another country. Some countries don't have pharmacies like we do in the US, and it can be hard to find the medication you need. And that's why a friend and I recently started taking these pills. They contain important vitamins and minerals that boost your immune system and protect you against getting sick while traveling. Not only does it help you avoid getting sick, but it helps you avoid the horrible symptoms that come along with being sick. They are fast-acting and long-lasting, so you can feel better quickly and stay healthy throughout your trip. It's safe to say that this past year has changed the way we travel. And with new variants popping up all over the place, it's more important than ever to take care of ourselves while traveling. But thankfully, I know a little something that can help with that. In the historic French Quarter of New Orleans, there have been many famous faces that have walked the streets. Musicians, politicians, actors, actresses, you name it. But the spirits of some who have walked the streets never seem to have left. One such spirit is that of Madame Delphine LaLaurie, who spent her last years in the French Quarter at the corner of Royal and 13th Streets. She owned a mansion there, but she had a very dark side that few knew about. She hosted parties in her mansion, and some say she hosted seances, although she never admitted to practicing voodoo. Neighbors complained about strange noises and smells coming from the house. But no one knew what was really going on inside, until one day the stench became unbearable. After the local authorities broke down the door and entered the premises, they found 7 slaves who had been brutally murdered. It was said that Madame Delphine tortured these slaves, and some sources even say that she cannibalized them, though this has never been confirmed. She was arrested and taken to trial, but due to the fact that she was rich and white, she was acquitted of all charges. She continued to live in her mansion until her death, and even after her death, her ghost continued to reside there. People say her ghost can often be seen walking around the neighborhood, especially on St. Anne's Eve, which is celebrated on July. If you've watched my videos for some time now, then you know that I love telling stories about LaLaurie, because there are many stories about her, but not all of them are true. The truth is, there is a lot that we don't know about her, and what makes the situation even more complicated is that many authors wrote books about her, and those books became bestsellers, and this led to a snowball effect. As time went on, people began adding more and more onto the story, and it eventually became a horror story. But the truth is that we don't know much about her at all. All we know for sure is that she did have a mansion in the French Quarter, and it was rumored that she held parties there. But other than that, everything else is a mystery, Anyways, guys, that was the last story in today's video. Thank you all for watching. And as always, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the stories I shared with you today. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.